West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Can't imagine you ever saying, bring me some of the boxes that we brought back from the White House. I'd like to look at them. Did you ever do that?
I would have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with it.
But I know you, I don't think you would do it.
Well, I don't have a lot of time, but I would have the right to do that. Right. I would do that. There'd be
All right, let me move on.
Remember this.
Yeah.
This is the Presidential Records Act. I have the right to take stuff. Do you know that they ended up paying Richard Nixon, I think, $18 million for what he had? They did the Presidential Records Act. I have the right to take stuff. I have the right to look at stuff.
Oh, my God.
Joe, that's the famous interview from March 27th where Sean Hannity was trying to coach Donald Trump out of an indictment, out of implicating himself.
But he indicts
and
himself.
Donald Trump went in again and again and again. And we'll talk to Chuck Rosenberg about this, but he keeps citing the Presidential Records Act. He did it in that CNN town hall a couple of weeks ago when he said infamously, I took what I took, saying, yes, I did take all those classified documents. He's completely wrong. He either doesn't understand the Presidential Records Act or is just lying about it. But that interview was something.
Well, he understands it. There's been testimony that he understands it extraordinarily well. He actually walked through it with several people who have testified about how much he understands the process of classification and declassifying. He just, well, there's just no way, but he's just not that smart. He's really not. I mean, if he's a fascist, he's like a Hogan's Heroes, like a guard type of fascist. He's just not that smart. I mean, the thing is, the guy says George Conway, like Sean Hannity is saying, I know you wouldn't commit a crime. I can commit a crime if I want to. Okay, but Mr. President, I know you wouldn't commit this crime. I can commit that crime if I want to.
Aye.
Sean Hannity says, okay, let's move on. Talk about the woke college campuses. I mean, there is so much there going to intent, time and time again. And I say he's not smart because he said things in the CNN town hall meeting that are going to get him in legal trouble as well. Time and again, he admits the intent to commit that crime publicly in public spaces.
Well, that's absolutely right. And the best evidence that he has created, the best evidence against him is evidence that he has created by having the documents in his office, by having the documents in his home, by talking to lawyers who then try to get them to commit illegal acts and them refusing, and then a court holding that basically that there is no attorney-client privilege because of he was trying to commit criminal acts. And you're right, he's just absolutely not bright at all. He's a dope, but he is a stubborn dope, and that's the reason why he's here today. Mm-hmm. And he had every opportunity, as we've been pointing out, to give these documents back. If he had invited over to Mar-a-Lago in the middle of last year, a year ago, we would not be here today. We might not have even heard about the incident because it would have been just viewed as, oh, well, there were some misplaced documents and he gave them back. It wouldn't be a big deal.
So, Chuck Rosenberg, there's such a fog of disinformation just flowing from so many sources over the last 12 hours or so about why this happened, what happened. Oh, it's just like what Joe Biden did. No, it's not. And we can get into that. It's Joe Biden going directly after his political opponent. No, we just explained why that's not true. And that Donald Trump had the right to take these records under the Presidential Records Act. That is just not true. We've explained that many times over the last few months. Can you explain, because we do have to reestablish the facts here, can you explain what the Presidential Records Act does say and what it does not say?
Sure, Willie. So it is important to establish the baseline. The Presidential Records Act requires that presidents return to the American people through the National Archives documents generated by their administration. This routinely happens at the end of a presidency. Now, the end of a presidency may be chaotic, but it doesn't obviate the need for a president and his staff to abide the law. And the law holds that the records of a presidential administration do not belong to the individual president. They belong to the American people, and the National Archives is the caretaker on our behalf. By the way, to George's point, I think it's an important one. Without the obstruction, without counseling witnesses to lie, without hiding documents, without concealing evidence, you may not have a case at all. All of that underscores a defendant's guilt, his intent. And when you lie or obfuscate or obstruct, it suggests that the thing you are obstructing, the thing you are obfuscating, was a crime. When a federal judge, found that the attorney-client privilege had been obliterated, and that the government was entitled to speak to one of Mr. Trump's attorneys, which, by the way, is an extraordinary thing. I can count on one finger the number of times that happened to me in my public prosecutorial career. That's an extraordinary thing, to allow the government to peek behind that curtain. It's because there were underlying acts of obstruction. And so the Presidential Records Act is clear. The records belong to the American people, not to the president. And trying to obstruct NARA, the National Archives, in its work to retrieve the documents and then counseling witnesses to lie is a serious, serious federal crime.
Yeah, Mika, I'm communicating with Richard Haas, our golf correspondent.
Yeah.
And young Richard asks this. He says, one big question mystery. Why did Trump take and hold the documents?
No.
What was the motive? Why would he do that?
Why?
The answer goes back to the first thing we said, is he's a dope, right? But also, more to the point, and this is what he hasn't understood. He doesn't understand where he is now, what arena he's just walked into the middle of, okay? He thought they were his. And he thought that nobody could tell him they weren't his. And even though he knew he was violating the law, he thought, as a bully, that he could hold the documents, that he could keep the documents. This is a guy that's bullied people his entire life. He's always stayed 5 minutes away from imminent destruction. And he survived it his whole life. And so he thinks this is just like fighting the New York Post, leaking documents to the New York Post about how he's great having sex. He thinks this is leaking to the Daily News, changing his name so they could say, oh, that Donald Trump is a man about town. And what name did he use to be that publicist?
John Miller. John Barron.
John Miller. John Miller. He thinks that this is like the Mueller report, that he can just push all of this aside and lie. And I'm serious. He's been doing this since the mid-1970s, and he's gotten away with it. Any lawyer will tell you, if they're a dumb country lawyer like me especially, there's a reason to stay away from the federal courthouse. whenever possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's frightening when you walk through those stores. It's all business. It's the reason Giuliani would lie outside and make all of these outrageous claims about stolen elections and go inside. The federal judge would say, are you suggesting there's widespread fraud in this election? And Giuliani would go, no, sir. No, sir, I am not. Trump thought he could bully people. He's now going to find out, and he's going to be delivered the harshest lesson of his life, that you can't bully federal judges. You can't bully the feds themselves. And he's going to pay for this. He may pay for it with his liberty unless he cops a deal. He's going to have to plea, or I'm predicting he's going to get charged and very likely will spend time in jail.
It is Friday, the 9th of June of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our very special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. And we are, yes. Well, I guess we can raise our glasses high in a toast of, well, I don't know, a new beginning? Jeez, let's hope so. And I guess that new beginning may constitute some rather ridiculous outrage by the organized mob party. I think that's what they really are. They are a criminal enterprise, and they want to elevate who they think is the criminal of their choice. Wow. You know, they kept saying that everybody's crooks, and they made sure their guy was a crook. Jeez. And then they get all angry at us because we don't want crooks. We actually jail our crooks, and if they're not crook enough, we just kick them out of the, political process. These people, they look at running for office as a way to keep from being tried for a crime. I just don't get it. We allow this? Is this what we're going to allow? All right. Well, to know the tenor of these people's mindset, one has to acknowledge all politics are local. And I got into a little tete-a-tete with a local secessionist who wants to carve out a part of Oregon and call it Greater Idaho. What? It's going to be parts of Idaho, so they can be part of Idaho, but a greater part of Idaho, apparently. And it encompasses the rural states or the rural counties of Oregon. Not all of them. They're still trying to get the votes. They won this last little county by 7 votes. And they're trumpeting what a great success. Oh, look at the success. We're going to get our own little state. The socialist totalitarian government of the Democrat socialists. And I love their use of urban, because we know what they mean by urban. Yeah, well, I got to tell you, these counties have already been sanctioned by the state for racist practices, and so that's where their totalitarianism charge comes from. You have to treat people equally. No, you totalitarian socialist jackboots. We have a right to be bigots. We have a right to be racist. We have a right to light a forest fire to cover the fact that we were poaching deer out of season on federal land. That's what that whole Malheur imbroglio was about. Bundy and his crew came to rally around this family of ranchers who set a forest fire on fire, or set a forest on fire, I'll get it out, to cover their tracks because they were poaching deer out of season on federal property that they were leasing. Okay. Sounds criminal. Sounds like that's like wrong. Oh no, we're sticking it to the feds. Lit a goddamn forest on fire. And we're supposed to say that's the actions of a patriotic American? Okay, so this local secessionist who insists that we are the little quislings. It takes real patriots like them to stand up and demand that they be heard. We want our representation. We demand our representation. Oh, my God. So then this fellow wants to lecture me. He wants to educate me on his idea that they consider to be fact. This is a republic. It's a representative republic. It's a representative democracy. Hamilton called it a representative democracy, so shut up. Oh, yeah, but look at the, this one clause in the Constitution, where it says that the state will be run as a republic. Yeah, well, it was never defined either, was it? And then we can go to the Federalist Papers to find out a little bit about what they thought a republic in the states would encompass. Now, of course, we know that a Republican form of government has Constitution, which we do. But a representative democracy says the majority rules, and that's what this secessionist cannot stand, is the fact that majority rules. When they say that they have an outsized population that's not being represented, yes, you are. You're just not politicking correctly. If you want people in those so-called urban environments to see the error of their ways and to vote the way that you see fit, maybe knock on a few doors, canvass, campaign, make your grievances known. Get the votes. They're upset because it's those people telling us how to live. Yeah, you cannot set a forest on fire to cover your tracks when you're poaching wildlife. Wrong, wrong, wrong. And they go, oh, you're a jackboot socialist telling us how to live our lives. Hey, let me tell you, you're not just living your life. The actions of your, or the results of your actions impact other people. Let alone what the Constitution says about property, especially when it's theirs. Okay, we could go on that rant for a while. And we could also talk about the SCOTUS decision in which they decided not to gut the rest of the Voting Rights Act. But I keep telling everybody, they give us a carrot, then they beat us with a stick in the next rulings. So I'm waiting for that. Okay. You get to vote, but you're going to be 3/5 of a person. Hopefully, one of the rulings is that they're not going to go back to making black people 3/5 of a person. But I don't know. Clarence Thomas could write the majority decision on that one. You know he will. Okay, what do we have in store for you here on this fabulous Friday? Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, by the way, at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because that's where we are. Well, on the rest of the menu, the FBI arrested the Texas businessman linked to the impeachment of Ken Paxton. He's the Attorney General. Joe Biden picked a longtime transportation official as acting head of the Federal Aviation Administration, and it's a woman. And you know what MAGA's going to say about that. Oh, no, can't have it. And here's some great news. Juneteenth is now recognized as a state holiday in Nevada. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the United States Agency for International Development suspended all food aid for millions in Ethiopia after an investigation found widespread theft. And Malaysia and Indonesia have ended their 18-year-long sea border disputes. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across the page from that chat room link, to the left, by the way, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and maybe if you could afford to send us what you might spend on, well, I don't know, how about an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance? If you could afford to send those funds to us once a month, we are able to, well, pay our bills. It puts a big dent in paying our bills and the other costs associated with running this powerhouse of resistance, as the founders originally intended so many years ago, and we're doing it. So thank you for allowing us to fulfill that civic duty, and thank you for your generosity, truly. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable by going to @Netroots Radio on those platforms, and you'll find us. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. You can also follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary 10 minutes before showtime on Daily Coz, and you can always find the show notes and links for all the diaries by going to my social media feeds, and the links will be there, and then you can find the links. You can follow the show on Twitter, such as it is, at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Jake Blyberg and Paul J. Weber of the Associated Press. The FBI yesterday, and that was Thursday, by the way, arrested a businessman at the center of the scandal that led to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's historic impeachment, a move that came amid new questions about the man's dealings raised by financial records the Republicans' lawyers made public to try to clear him of bribery allegations. Nate Paul, age 36, was taken into custody by federal agents and booked into an Austin jail in the afternoon yesterday, according to Travis County Sheriff's Office records. It was not immediately clear what charges led to his arrest, but the record showed he was being held on a federal detainer for a felony. Paul's arrest followed a years-long federal investigation into the Austin real estate developer, a probe that Paxton involved his office in, setting off a chain of events that ultimately led to his impeachment last month. Lawyers for Paul did not immediately respond to requests for comment, because when do they ever? When does any of them do? One of Paxton's defense attorneys, Dan Codgel, said he had no additional information on the arrest, and the FBI declined to comment because they never do. That's their job. They do their job and they don't comment. Not now, at least. FBI agents examining Paul's troubled real estate empire searched his Austin offices and palatial home in 2019. The next year, 8 of Paxton's top deputies reported the Attorney General to the FBI on allegations of bribery and abusing his office to help Paul, including by hiring an outside lawyer to examine the developer's claims of wrongdoing by federal agents. The allegations by Paxton's staff prompted an FBI investigation, which remains ongoing and are central to articles of impeachment overwhelmingly approved by the GOP-led House of Representatives, the State House there in Texas. On Wednesday, Paxton's defense team showed a packed room of journalists a bank statement that included a 2020 wire transfer reportedly showing him, and not a donor, paying more than $120,000 for a home renovation. The wire transfer was dated October 1st, 2020, the same day Paxton's deputies signed a letter informing the head of human resources at the Texas Attorney General's office that they had reported Paxton to the FBI. The $121,000 payment was to Cupertino Builders, whose manager was an associate of Paul. That company did not incorporate as a business in Texas until more than 3 weeks after the transaction took place. A company of the same name was formed in Delaware in April of that year, although public filings there do not make clear who is behind it. Last year, a court-appointed overseer for some of Paul's companies wrote in a report that Cupertino Builders was used for fraudulent transfers from his business to Narishma Raju Saiguraju, who was convicted of fraud in California in 2016. The report described him as Paul's friend. Paul, who also employed a woman with whom Paxton acknowledged having an extramarital affair, has denied bribing Paxton. In a deposition, Paul described Saiguraju as an independent contractor and said he didn't really remember how they first met. Now, the timing of the payment and the identity of who was paid for renovations at Paxton's home in Austin was not publicly known before his new legal team held a news conference Wednesday in which they put financial documents on a projector screen while criticizing the impeachment. They were first reported by the Wall Street Journal. Tony Busby, a prominent Houston attorney who was hired by Paxton over the weekend and led the news conference, said by email that receipts clearly demonstrate Paxton paid for the repairs. He did not address questions about the timing of the payments or of Cupertino Builders. At the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. President Joe Biden has picked a longtime government official and current top aide in the Transportation Department to serve as acting administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. The White House said yesterday, Thursday, that Polly Trottenberg replaced Billy Nolan, who indicated in April that he planned to leave the FAA. Trottenberg held a high-ranking job in the Transportation Department during the Obama administration and has most recently been deputy to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. She headed the New York City Transportation Department from 2014 to 2020 and worked as a Senate aide and at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The FAA, which manages air traffic throughout the nation, has been without a Senate-confirmed leader since last March of last year, when Stephen Dixon resigned halfway through his 5-year term. Since then, the agency has faced understaffing of air traffic controllers, a technical outage that grounded flights nationwide in January, and several close calls between airline jets. Biden's nominee to replace Dixon withdrew this year when it became clear that he would not be confirmed. Republicans said Phil Washington lacked enough aviation experience to run the FAA. The White House said the administration is conducting a national search for a new nominee. Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Juneteenth is now a state holiday in Nevada, which is joining a growing number of states, including Texas, New York, Virginia, and Washington, that honor the day when the last enslaved people in the United States learned they were free. Republican Governor Joe Lombardo signed the bill into law yesterday, Thursday, elevating the June 19 holiday from a day of observance to a state holiday, meaning many state employees can take the day off. It now joins holidays including New Year's Day, Veterans Day, July 4th, Labor Day, Nevada Day, and Christmas. The measure passed by votes of 40-1 in the state assembly and 19-2 in the state senate. As the first state to ratify the 15th Amendment, we gave African Americans the right to vote. Nevada has a long and proud history of supporting civil rights, said Democratic Assemblywoman Claire Thomas, one of the bill's sponsors. By designating Juneteenth as a state holiday, Nevada continues to honor that legacy and celebrate the progress that has been made in the fight for equality. The celebration stems from when news of the slavery abolition reached Galveston, Texas in 1865, 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery in the U.S., and 5 months after the 13th Amendment signing, which declared all enslaved people free. The annual celebration started in Texas, but spread as black Texans moved elsewhere. Hundreds of companies also give employees the day off. In 2021, President Joe Biden signed a bill passed by Congress to make Juneteenth as a federal holiday. All right, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, To Be Careful or Not. Nicole Holofcener wrote 2018's Can You Ever Forgive Me, starring Melissa McCarthy. Before that, she wrote and directed 2013's Enough Said, starring James Gandolfini and frequent collaborator Julie Louis-Dreyfus. And now she's directing one of her own screenplays again. It's fun slowly learning what You Hurt My Feelings is about. Holofcener takes a long time introducing you to this clutch of people in New York City who are apparently secure enough money-wise that they're free to spiral in on their own insecurities, the failings of their partners, and whether or not their creativity-based jobs work for them, since they clearly don't have to work for their jobs. And when the penny finally drops and you realize what issue the movie is going to turn on, Holofcener is well poised to steadily and confidently pay off all that she has set up. I've said before that it's hard for me to ignore my unsettledness when million-dollar actors and directors dress down to portray financially desperate people. Well, here's the opposite. People with money portraying people with money. But I just don't care about the life events and the concerns of these privileged, self-focused characters, which begs the question. Rich people play poor people? Rich people play rich people? Can I ever be satisfied? I don't know. Maybe I'm more like these characters than I care to admit. Maybe Holofcener has struck something universal by telescoping into this very specific group, and that's that many of us are stuck seeing the world through our own little neurotic glasses. As we hear twice in the film, we know the world is falling apart, but we still blow so much energy caring about the things closer to us or that we just hold close to us. Anyway, You Hurt My Feelings is a deadpan, ironic comedy of neuroses that feels like updated mid-stage Woody Allen minus the creepy, inappropriate relationships and the guilt you feel from enabling the inappropriate relationships of a creep. Just, in case you care. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There's several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. But it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or Naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a single father of 2 who works 3
part-time jobs and still can't put enough food on the table?
Or maybe a mother who cleans offices at night,
hoping to find meeting leftovers to take home to her hungry family.
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Good eating habits developed in childhood can last a lifetime, but getting children to eat their fruits and vegetables is a common problem. Eating them adds important nutrients, helps control weight, and reduces the risks for many serious illnesses. Children in the U.S. are eating more fruit. However, 60% of children get fewer fruits than recommended, and 93% don't get enough vegetables. Child care, schools, and school districts can help change this by meeting or exceeding federal nutrition standards for meals and snacks, including fruits and vegetables wherever food is offered, and helping children learn about and taste fruits and vegetables. At home, parents can eat a variety of fruits and vegetables with their children and provide them as snacks, even if it takes many tries. Also, parents can include their children when shopping for, growing, and preparing fruits and vegetables. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
We're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Let's consider a condemned person's last meal. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In June 2000, Michael Tisius, age 19, fatally shot 2 guards during a botched jail escape. 23 years later, in June 2023, the state of Missouri executed him for those homicides. He was 42. Before the execution, the man who was primarily responsible for the crime revealed how he had manipulated Tisius into attempting the jailbreak. That revelation didn't matter. And 5 jurors who voted for death petitioned to have the death penalty changed to life without parole. That petition didn't matter. And it came to light that another juror could not read or write contrary to state law, which also didn't matter. And over the past quarter century in prison, that previously homeless teenager had changed a lot. In his final statement, he said, "I really did try to become a better man. I wish I could have made things right while I was here." For the legal system, none of that mattered. Part of the ritual of execution in America is to report on the condemned person's last meal. For his last meal, Michael Tisius had a bacon cheeseburger, fries, both curly and regular, and a chocolate shake. And then the state government, for crimes committed at age 19, proceeded to kill someone who had killed someone in order to prove that killing someone is wrong. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1954. That was the day that marked the public downfall of Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy. Senator McCarthy had become the public face of anti-communist hysteria during the Cold War. He used his position as senator to make wild accusations against alleged communists in the U.S. government. He ruined careers and ramped up public fears of a menacing communist threat. Public officials, labor leaders, university presidents, and Hollywood stars and directors all became potential targets of the Red Scare. The hysteria took a particular toll on the labor movement. In 1946, Congress overrode President Harry Truman's veto and passed the Taft-Hartley Act. The act required that all union leaders sign an affidavit that they were not communists. Those with ties to the Communist Party, or those who simply refused to sign the loyalty pledge on principle, faced expulsion from the labor movement. The communist purges ripped the labor movement apart, expelling some of the most progressive and radical leaders. Senator McCarthy was the public face of the anti-red witch hunts, but some in the public began to question his bullying tactics. Then the senator made an unfounded claim that the army had been infiltrated by communists. For 2 months, the American public watched as Senator McCarthy conducted televised hearings into the United States Army. Joseph Welch served as the chief legal counsel for the Army. Senator McCarthy accused another lawyer of Welch's firm of having communist ties. Angered, Welch asked,
"Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?"
Many in the public watched the testimony and wondered the same thing. McCarthy's popularity and power was finally checked.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the mid-80s, about the same as yesterday. Partly cloudy, though we have plenty of sun at the moment. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible still. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. A few passing clouds overnight with lows in the mid-50s. Winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10. And then intervals of clouds and sunshine tomorrow with highs in the mid-80s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated very high right here in our little hamlet of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 19 parts per million. And that daytime UV index is very high at level 9, so do take care and you know what to do. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles and relative humidity is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. And that's why it's known as the Weather Underground, because it is. It's the Weather Underground. London is 78 degrees and fair. Paris is 87 and sunny. Rome is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 83 and fair. Kabul is 75 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 85 and fair. Tokyo is 71 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 47 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 57 degrees, cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay, and New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and fair, except for the lingering toxic wildfire smoke that is covering the eastern seaboard. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The United States Agency for International Development said it has suspended all food aid to Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous country, after an internal investigation found donated food intended for millions of hungry people there was being diverted on a widespread scale. While the agency's statement did not say who was responsible for the theft, agency head Samantha Power, in a briefing in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee earlier this spring on the initial discoveries of massive theft of food aid in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, said the theft appeared to involve collusion between parties on both sides in a government conflict with opponents there. Power at the time called her agency's delay in detecting the widespread and continued theft of aid a systemic failure by her agency. The U.S. is the biggest single donor to Ethiopia, providing $1.8 billion in humanitarian assistance, including food aid, in the 2022 fiscal year. In total, 20 million people across Ethiopia rely on aid because of conflict and drought, out of a total population of about 120 million. An internal memo prepared by a group of humanitarian donors and seen by the Associated Press also pointed to the involvement of Ethiopia's federal government in the diversion of food aid. The scheme appears to be orchestrated by federal and regional government of Ethiopian entities, with military units across the country benefiting from humanitarian assistance, said the document from the Humanitarian and Resilience Donor Group, which includes bilateral and multilateral partners. The document said USAID staff members had launched inspection visits of 63 flour mills in 7 of Ethiopia's 9 regions since March. They witnessed a significant diversion of USAID-funded humanitarian food commodities alongside food donated by France, Japan, and Ukraine, according to the donor report. The announcement comes after both USAID and the United Nations World Food Program last month said they had suspended aid to Ethiopia's northern Tigray region while they investigated allegations of food aid theft, which were first reported by the AP in April.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more Associated Press staff brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Malaysia and Indonesia signed agreements yesterday, Thursday, that ended long-standing maritime border disputes and vowed to bolster cooperation to fight highly detrimental discriminatory measures against palm oil. Visiting Indonesian President Widodo and Malaysian Prime Minister Ibrahim witnessed the signing of 2 landmark treaties on the delimitation of the nation's territorial seas in parts of the Straits of Malacca and the Sulawesi Sea. Other signed pacts included plans to improve border crossings, strengthen border trade, and promote investment. After 18 years of negotiations, praise be to God, it has finally been resolved, Widodo told a joint news conference in reference to the sea treaties. Widodo arrived in Malaysia on Wednesday, accompanied by his wife and cabinet ministers after a short visit to Singapore. His 2-day visit reciprocates Anwar's trip to Indonesia in January, shortly after Ibrahim took office. In a joint statement after their meeting, the leaders said the signing of the treaties will provide a strong foundation for future maritime boundary negotiations. They pledged to resolve other land boundary issues by June of 2024. The 2 leaders also reiterated their stand to cooperate closely to battle the EU's highly detrimental discriminatory measures against palm oil. They urge the EU to work toward a fair and equitable resolution. We will speak in one voice to defend the palm oil industry on, we're told, the news conference. The EU introduced a new law this year banning the import of commodities linked to deforestation, a move that is expected to hit Malaysia and Indonesia, the two countries which jointly account for 85% of global palm oil output. Reportedly sent a joint mission to Brussels last week to try and resolve the matter with the EU. Jokowi said the two countries also agreed to set up a mechanism to better protect Indonesian migrant workers in Malaysia without giving details. Indonesians make up the bulk of over 2 million foreign workers in Malaysia, mostly in plantations, industries, and as maids. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin l'âge tombe, nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.